Welcome to AM Best Audio.
I am William Borden for AM Best Audio. Paul Zamora, Chief Underwriting Officer at ICW Group, spoke with us about how workers' compensation premiums are falling in most states, with the notable exception of California, and also how technology is revamping workplace safety. Paul, so what sort of trends is ICW Group seeing about the frequency and severity of workers' comp claims?
Yeah, so that differs by state. I mean, I just educate you a little bit, right? We're in 2020, we're national from a workers' comp standpoint, but we're really trying to focus on writing real operations in 22 core states. California is our biggest, so to answer that question, it does differ by state. Most states, I think what you're seeing is frequency is still pretty low. It may be rising a little bit, but it's manageable. Severity's not creeping up too much. California, I would say, is the one difference. And if you look at California and the data that we get from the WCRB in California, we are starting to see an increase in severity. So in frequency, they'll tell you is down. Frequency of claims, indemnity claims, is down about 1.4% in 2024. But what we're seeing and they're seeing is that there's a larger number of large claims. So the frequency of severity is definitely up. And some of those contributing factors are we're seeing a much higher number of cumulative trauma claims added to the initial injury. So it was a back injury or a cut finger, and they're adding cumulative trauma to that as well. And that was about 18.5% in terms of the component. If you had an injury, where did you also have CT involved? About 18.5% of injuries had a CT component in 2022. Now that's up to 21.8% in 2023, and you're starting to see that continue to go up, and I think you'll probably see that rise again in 2024. Some of the causes that they're seeing in that is more attorney involvement is driving a lot of that. Most CT claims, if not all, have an applicant attorney involvement in that. Most injured workers don't randomly just add CT. It generally comes into play when there's an attorney involved. And so what that does is it causes an increase in allocated loss adjustment expense because of the litigation factor. So ALAE has been increasing by about 9% on average from 2021 to 2024. And that's your attorney fees, your expert witnesses, your investigators you need to hire, or independent medical examiners to try to combat some of those issues that happen when an attorney gets involved. So we're seeing a big increase in allocated loss adjustment expense in Northern California. That used to be really high in LA. Mm-hmm. Up in the Bay Area and San Diego, it wasn't as high because you had less litigation. But one of the adverse effects of COVID, when COVID hit, you were allowed to do remote hearings. So attorneys didn't have to travel to go to a hearing. And so what's happening now is a larger number of attorneys in LA are representing injured workers that work in the Bay Area or Sacramento or San Diego. And so that's driving up some of those costs as well. And they're also trying to change the venue, try to get the actual case heard in LA versus up in the Bay Area if they can do that. So big increases in there, and then we are seeing an increase in medical, which you generally see that on a litigated claim because they want them to treat more, and that's up about 9% in 2024. So California is where you're really seeing the increase in the severity in the workers' comp side. Most of the other states are seeing flat or very minimal increases.
Are you seeing similar trends in other states?
Most states take their rate changes 1-1. California's a little different. They take it 9-1. But when you start seeing the rate changes being proposed from a premium standpoint, most of the proposed rate changes are declines. So like New York is proposing 1-1 a minus 13.2% in their rates. Maryland minus 12.3%. Those are big ones. Florida just came out minus 6.9%. And then you see some moderate ones in the Midwest, like Iowa's a minus 2.5%, Minnesota's a minus 4.6%, and Wisconsin's a minus 3.2%. So most of the other states are recommending decreases, where California The Bureau, WCRB, recommended an 11.2% increase, which is pretty substantial. The commissioner approved 8.7. He disagreed with some of their assumptions and made it a little bit smaller. That is really the only state in the most recent history where we're seeing proposed increases versus decreases.
Yeah, I spoke with a couple actuaries and analysts about this topic, and one of the things that they mentioned was how medical inflation doesn't always equate in the broader picture of medical inflation to workers' comp, because you're dealing with not so much the specialty drugs that are driving healthcare inflation or these weight loss treatments that you're seeing out there. It's kind of, you're going to your physical therapist, maybe an orthopedist. It's kind of like your more nuts and bolts type of medical care. Is that pretty much on the money?
It is, and then we have fee schedules as well, right? So they can't just bill whatever they want, right? For the most part, if the treatment that's handling, if it applies to the fee schedule, right, then we get to charge a certain number. And that will change over time, but that gets passed through legislative changes that generally incorporate themselves in the rates. And so we get less impacted by that. Now, where you'll see it, though, is where, they're treating more, right? They're trying to treat more. They're trying to do maybe unique treatments that may not apply to the fee schedule to try to generate some additional revenue that way. But yeah, from a comp standpoint, because of the fee schedule and because of the types of things you're treating, we're a little bit more insulated from medical inflation.
How would you say this is bearing out across different professional sectors or job sectors?
When we start talking about in California, I'll use because that's where you're seeing the increase. It's across the board. There's not like one industry that is seeing it and everybody else isn't. There is wholesale. The wholesale industry is seeing a much bigger spike, and a lot of that's due to they're seeing a bigger spike in CT claims. So you're seeing a big increase there. But if you go to the 9 or 10 industry sectors that they separate, all of them are seeing an increase in severity. There's not one outlier that says we're not seeing anything. But like I said, the wholesale industry seems to, their spike is quite a bit larger than others.
Now, what sorts of technology are being deployed to help out in terms of managing it from ICW Group's side of things, or also on the employer side, what's being done with technology to help manage this?
It's a good question. There's a few that we've either been testing or will be testing in the area of safety with the goal of reducing those severity losses that we're starting to see in frequency in general. So we're trying to do a pilot with smart cameras. And so smart cameras they're kind of normal cameras, but within your facility, but you connect them to a black box that has an algorithm in it. And the algorithm, the goal of the algorithm is to capture near misses. And so we're trying to do a pilot program with a vendor in that space because it's still pretty expensive to deploy that. And you're somewhat limited. It's got to be a fixed plan operation. Like you can't do it in a construction site or a trucking firm or something like that. It's got to be more of a manufacturing fixed plant type of operation. And then you got to be smart about where you deploy because it doesn't measure everything. And I'll get into that in just a quick second. But again, the goal is to capture the near misses. And the reason it's important to capture those near misses is most severity claims that occur, you had 4 or 5 near misses that happened before that severity claim actually happened. And you got lucky that it didn't blow up into a severity loss right away. So an example being a forklift almost runs somebody over, like it hits the brakes just in time. Or a person almost slips on water, but they don't. And those are just some examples of near misses. And so if you can catch those on the front end, and you know about that near miss immediately, then there are hopefully things you can implement from an employer standpoint so that near miss never happens again, and then you avoid that severity loss that you would have gotten by not paying attention to it. And most business owners will tell you that near misses don't get reported, right? Nobody who almost ran somebody over goes to the safety guy and say, hey, something's going on here. I almost ran this person over. And so they never hear about it till the accident does happen. And so the smart cameras will help do that in real time. Some of the things they can measure, improper lifting or ergonomic issues, it's smart enough to see that's happening. Employees not wearing safety gear when they should. Employees in an area that they shouldn't be in. It's unsafe, and it's really a no employee zone. The speeding in the factory, liquid on the floor. Those are just some examples of what they can measure. And then the key is it notifies somebody at the employer's office in real time, and they do something about it in real time. Or it flags a video and they can watch it pretty quickly and see where the areas that were unsafe, and then try to make a corrective action so that doesn't happen again. And that is the key, that you have to do something with the data. So employers, we're educating, like, it's not going to do it for you. You have to be proactive in this area. So that's one. Another one is there's technology out there that allows employers to video via cell phone an employee doing something, and it's mostly ergo related. They can send it to us, and then the AI tool will analyze what's wrong with this picture, or if it's fine, and then make recommendations on changes. Like if it's somebody bending too much, maybe it's do the work on a more elevated platform, or if they are reaching too far, move the things closer to you. So it'll give you advice on how to eliminate some of those ergonomic problems. And then the third one that's been around for a little while, it's just a little bit harder to get up and running, is the wearables. And we did do a pilot with wearables, and some of the challenges you get with the wearables is employers are a little concerned about forcing employees to wear them, because it is capturing data all day long, and they feel like it's intrusive. And so I think the wearables need case law that says, hey, this is a safety device, and employers have the right to ask their employees or enforce their employees to wear them, and then you'll get a bigger uplift in wearables. And it's no different than a hard hat, right? Today, if you're in a construction zone, you have to wear a hard hat, right? It's considered a safety device. If you're in a hospital where there's radiation, you got to wear a badge that monitors radiation. It's not an employee choice. And I think that has to occur with some of these wearables, where it's been approved that this is a safety device, and employers actually have the ability to enforce the wearing of it. If that doesn't happen, that's been a challenge, where employees are like, I'm not wearing it, and you can't force them to wear it, and it becomes a problem.
Customize your data experience. BestLink now offers an interactive company dashboard that provides company-level intelligence in a fast, user-friendly interface featuring interactive tables, charts, and Sparkline performance histories. Customize the dashboard tiles to prioritize the insurer ratings, data, and analytics that best support your workflow. AM Best. Our insight, your advantage.
So there's a bit of a loss control mindset that goes into this whole process as well.
Absolutely. Employers should be looking for, what can I do to try to make my operation safer, especially when rates are going up. When rates are going up, that is the way you save money, right? You make your operation safer, have less claims, which ultimately, hopefully, lower your experience modification factor, which equals premium savings. I think employers kind of forget about that when rates are declining, because there's no pain, right? They're like, oh, I'm getting a 10% decrease, it's all great. But when rates start to go the other way, I think the employers need to have a more hyper-focus on safety.
What innovations are out there in the field of medicine or treatment of injury to help shorten the duration of some of these injuries so people return to work that much more quickly?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few of them that have been around for quite a while, and COVID helped build some of those, like telehealth and telerehab, right? That increases the access to medical services or treatments and reduces delays due to some scheduling conflicts that could occur. And the whole goal there is to, enable a quicker return to work outcome for the injured workers, so get treatment quicker and more easily. Can get a more personalized approach to pain management is another one that people are utilizing. So how do we reduce the use of opioids as an option to lead to quicker recoveries? And so things like nerve blocks are being used to try to help in the pain area rather than prescribe opioids. There's some new developed medicine. So, GLP GLP-1s or Ozempic are great examples where a lot of times when we have an injury, there's pre-existing conditions you have to treat because they're never going to fix the comp injury unless you fix those as well. And weight is, in some cases, obesity is a big part of that. So some of these medicines can help speed up that process to get people back to work, or we can now manage and try to treat the underlying work comp condition. There's use of robotic assistance in surgeries to lead to faster recovery times. And then you're starting to see now the use of AI to assist in early identification of comorbidities and pre-existing conditions that can inhibit or delay recovery if left untreated. So there's quite a bit that's going on in that space. And I think it's important for carriers to, push for some of these things and focus with their medical panels and their doctors to utilize some of those treatments.
How do you see some of the innovations that you mentioned affecting ICW Group's competitive position among the other workers' comp carriers? I know this is a very, very fragmented industry, and grabbing fractions of a point in market share can actually mean something. So how do you see this affecting your competitive standing?
Yeah, I think it puts us as a leader in the work comp space, and the reason I think it is because I think we're focused on the right things for customers. So when you think of comp, right, it's statutory, right? The benefits are the same from one carrier to the next, right? So what carriers compete on is pricing and I think service. And we focus very heavily on the service side of it, where we think we can help customers drive a better result. And so when I talk about those things, it's really focused on a couple areas. So one, it's in the risk management space. What can we do to help our customers eliminate or mitigate the exposure to loss? When I talk about eliminate, that should be option A if you can do it. An example I always give customers are if you take a fast food restaurant, once a month they might have to degrease their hoods. You can have an employee get on a ladder who's not skilled at that, doesn't probably have the right equipment to do that, or you can outsource it. You can say, I'm going to hire a vendor to do that. That's eliminating the exposure, right? I'm not going to have anybody around that. I have zero chance now of having my employee get injured. And it probably doesn't make a difference in your restaurant in terms of the quality of everything you do because your core employees are still doing the core restaurant duties. The example I'll give in like a fine dining restaurant, like you would never say outsource your chefs. Your chefs are the reason people are coming to that restaurant. There's where you go down the mitigate path. Like, where are the losses coming from, and what can we do to help mitigate those exposures to loss? And I think our team of risk management consultants, we have all in-house. We don't outsource it in all states. It's ICW employees doing this. And they're very skilled at helping our customers figure out creative ways to either eliminate or mitigate their exposure to loss. And so that's a key area for us. And then the other side of it is an aggressive approach to claims management and making sure that you are focused on driving a better claims result. I think most folks think of if a back injury with one carrier was $100,000, it's $100,000 with everybody, and that's not true. There are things you can do at certain decision points in the life of a claim to drive a better result or a worse result. So we have low caseloads per examiner so that they're proactively working the claim, not reactively working it. We have nurse case managers involved with the more serious injuries, talking to the doctor, talking to the family, making sure that the claim's going the right way. Telemed, nurse case triage are two other things. So folks can call a nurse hotline. They get on the call with a nurse. They try to figure out if it's first aid, can they manage it in-house with the nurse's advice, or do they actually need to go to the doctor? And if they do, then our nurse connects them with the doctor and gets them in there right away. And then in-house fraud as well, because you'd love to think every claim's legitimate, but they're not. And so you got to make sure you're taking a pretty aggressive approach to fraud and making sure you're fighting that as best as possible. And then all of those things equate to what I would say the ultimate goal of most policyholders, which is how do I pay as little as possible for my work comp? And we try to measure that in a message called the Power of Three, where we are focused on what are we doing for our customers in terms of helping them reduce their frequency of injuries. And then when claims occur, what are we doing to drive a lower result? And then ultimately, what does that do for their experience modification factor that can help them save money? And we're proud to say that ICW customers, pre-ICW, after 2 years with us, we see an 11% decline in frequency. We're 22% better than the industry as it relates to average severity. And when you look at XMODs, an insured coming to us on average is about a 102 XMOD, and after their fourth renewal, they're down to 93. So we're helping them, save money that way. So I think that's the key things a carrier should focus on. We do, and so I think it puts us in a really good position competitively in all states, but especially the states where you're seeing rates go up. Because if you're paying more, you need to get more for your money. And you need those services to help you from a work comp standpoint.
Thank you for listening to AM Best Audio. I am William Borden.
Looking to get the full attention of the insurance industry? We have the platforms that will do just that. Whether it be AM Best TV, AM Best Audio, Best Review Magazine, or Best Day. Find out more by calling AM Best Advertising Sales at 908-439-2200, extension 5399, and have a great day.